Hi and welcome to my workshop. This is part 6 of my live edge river coffee table. We've now left these legs to cure. Didn't take long at all to cure, probably about 12 hours I think they took. I didn't actually watch it because I was asleep at the time, but they're really nice and solid now. This is the first Sill Coat. There are some places where this resin is soaked into the wood, which is to be expected. So let's key this surface and then we can apply the second coat. Okay, so we've given them a good sand down now to key the surface. What we'll do is we'll wipe them down with a tack cloth and then we're ready to mix some resin. So we've mixed up some resin, it's now time to apply the second coat to the table leg. Just go over with the heat gun and pop some of the bubbles that are on the surface. Okay, so we've just put epoxy on both the legs, second coat. So the first coat we put on, some of it soaked in. This second coat now should cover the entire leg. So we're going to wait until this is cured now overnight and we'll see what it's like. You know, maybe it'll need a third coat. And then obviously we need to flip it over and do the other side. So let's leave this and we'll come back in a while and see what it's like. I don't know if you can see that, but that leg is looking absolutely beautiful. Now, this is without the epoxy on the other side. As you can see, that's what it's like with no epoxy. And then let's turn it back around. And there you have the beautiful epoxy resin. Makes it look lovely. And of course, on the opposite side of the leg, underneath, you can see there's all lumps and I've got to sand those off. I need to Sill Coat this one. The only problem I've got is, of course, when I put a Sill Coat on here, and then of course the final coat on here, again, that's going to drip off and it's going to drip off on the underside. So I'm not overly sure how I'm going to stop it all running and causing, you know, these big lumps on the opposite side as well. I guess I'll just have to clean this side up, see how it goes, and then maybe sand off any residue that drips underneath. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to go about this, so we're going to suck it and see. So let me crack on and sand these two legs on this side to get rid of the drips, and then we can Sill Coat these sides of the legs as well. So now, the next thing to do is mix up some resin and pour a Sill Coat on this side of the legs. Okay, so they're all sanded, they're all dusted down with tack cloths. I've put the tape on, which stops the resin getting in the dominoes slots. So now it's a matter of mixing up some resin and pour it. So we've put the epoxy on the second side of the legs. This is a Sill Coat, it's the first coat, so obviously the wood will absorb some of that epoxy. And then we'll come back, sand it down, and we can put the final coat on. So let's leave that overnight and see what it's like in the morning. The last thing we did was put the Sill Coat on the second side of the legs. Let's have a quick look at it. As you can see, it's looking really good. This was the Sill Coat, so it's the first coat on this naked side of the leg. It has soaked in a bit more in places. There's a bubble there. Obviously, this crack here I've got to deal with. But overall, the Sill Coat hasn't soaked in as much on this side, which I'm really happy about. So what I need to do is sand this surface to key it, then go over with the top coat. So we've prepared the table, we've put the tape on, we've sanded it all down, we've detacked it with a detacking cloth, so we're now ready to pour the resin. So we'll run it up to the edge, let it run over slightly, and then use our hands just to rub it in the edge of the table leg there. So that's the epoxy is now poured on the second side of the legs. We need to leave that, let that cure, and then we can come back and see what we're going to do next. So the resin's now cured overnight and it's nice and firm. There's a few little imperfections in the resin for some reason, so I think it will need a final coat. So that'll be a second coat. So we had the Sill Coat. Last night we put on a first top coat. So I think one more coat will do just to give it a real nice finish. So let's move on, let's sand these down and get them ready for the final pour. So we've now keyed the surface by sanding it all over, and now it's time to go inside and do the final coat of resin. Okay, so we're back inside now. I've put these on the cups that I'm using to raise it up off the ground. I've put the tape to cover up the dominoes again, so let's mix up some resin and then we can get pouring. We've just applied the second coat, which is the third coat in total, to the side of the legs and the sides. What we'll do is we'll wait until tomorrow for it to cure, and then we can do the second side of the legs, and that will be the legs fully epoxied. We've left the legs to cure. The resin's now cured on the side. I've brought them out to the workshops where I can sand them down. I'm going to put three top coats on. So we've had a Sill Coat, we've had 2 coats on this side of the leg, and I am going to put a third coat on. So we're back inside from the workshop. We just need to clean the dust off these with a tack cloth, then we can get ready to pour the second coat on the rear of the leg. So we've mixed up the resin and we're ready to pour the first one. So yesterday we applied the second top coat to the rear of the legs. Today we've just applied the second top coat to the front of the legs. We will come back tomorrow when the resin's cured. We will then sand down the front side, and then we're ready to apply the third and final coats to both sides of the legs. Okay, so here we are. The legs have now cured. I'm pretty sure this is the final coat now on this side of the legs. What we need to do now obviously is do the final coat on this side of the leg. So I'll just go and quickly sand this down where it's dripped underneath and I've wiped it, and then we can apply the final coat of resin to this side of the leg. Okay, so let's head out to the workshop and sand the back of it. Okay, so we've now sanded these off to key the surface on the rear of the leg. Now we're going to go inside and put the final coat on the legs. We're back inside now. I just need to dust off these legs and then we can get pouring the final coat on the rear of the legs. Final coat, rear of the legs, here we go. Okay, so the resin is now cured. I've left it for 2 days this time. If you look at that leg now, it's lovely. So that is the final coat on the rear of the legs, and that makes me so happy. So now all that means now is that this is the front of the leg. We just need to sand these drips off, and then we can put the final coat on the front of the legs. So I'm just putting some of this plastic I've got on just to protect it, because obviously we're going to put this face down to sand the front side. Okay, so let's head back inside and we can dust these off and pour the resin. Okay, so this is the final coat going on the legs. I forgot to press record when I did the first one, but you've seen me pour lots of resin, so it's probably getting a bit boring now. Okay, final coat going on. Okay, so that's the final coat on the legs. We're going to leave that to cure. I normally leave it for a day, but I'm going to leave these for 2 days because I want it to go extra hard, because the next job to do is to now polish these to make sure I get out any minor hairs that might have landed in it, you know, dust from the atmosphere. So we'll leave it for 2 days. So I'll see you in 2 days. Well, I won't, but I'll see you in the next clip. But for me, it'll be 2 days, if you get what I mean. See you then anyway. We just need to sand off the drips from the rear of the leg. Then we need to obviously buff that back to a glass-like finish, which I've never done before, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Like everything is always fine. Right, let's go. First things first is we need some sanding discs. Now I can't remember where I put them. Where did I put them? Are they up here? No. No. Doing here? That'll do. Next thing to do is go up to a 240 grit, then a 320 grit gently, just once over, and then we'll go up to the higher grades after that with a polisher. Let's go with a 240 grit. Now 320. Next we'll do 400 grit. And then we'll move on to 600 grit. Next 800 grit. Now 1200 grit. So this is the 3000 grit. Okay, so what we've done is we've gone through the grits from 180, 240, 320, 500, 600, 800, I think it was, yeah. Then 1200, then 3000 grit. And that, to be honest with you, is pretty good. However, we're now going to go higher with the polishing compounds. So we've got the lamb's wool mop, a couple of drips of compound. I'm using the Polar Shine 10 to start with, then we'll go to the 5 afterwards. Oh, you plonker. Don't turn it on until it's in contact with the surface, otherwise it splashes everywhere. Before you turn it on, put it on the table. Okay, let's give that a wipe off with a microfiber cloth. Now then, we need to go to the finer polishing compound. This is the Polar Shine 10. We're going to go to Polar Shine 5. We're going to change to a waffle pad. These are the waffle pads. Touching them, you'd think that they were harsher than the lamb's wool, and obviously the name of them, but actually I spoke to Merkel Technical Support and this is what they told me to use for the finer polishing compound. Put that on there. A couple of blobs of this stuff. So for Polar Shine 10, I kept a microfiber cloth with that. Polyshine 5, a new microfiber cloth, because you don't want to cross-contaminate the compounds. If you remember, this leg had all the drips over it, and now those drips are all gone, and that is as shiny as it was before. That is absolutely perfect. Those drips are gone. So that's the rear of that leg done. Like I say, it's the first time I've used polishing compound. It's the first time I've worked with resin, to be fair, and I wasn't sure how that was going to go. But do you know what? That is looking perfect. And there you go. That's the second leg done, ready for attaching. There we have it. Both legs are now polished to a real high sheen, back to resin-like surface. There are no little hairs in here now or bits of dust that fell in from the atmosphere. So now we can go back inside and we're ready to attach the legs. Woohoo! That's it for this episode. Thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate your support. Don't forget, if you like it, give it a thumbs up maybe, and if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you leave a comment, I will respond. Now, if you're already subscribed, thank you very much for your support. It's greatly appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. It does help me out. Really appreciate your support. Until next time, thanks very much.